All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick and Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, powered by our good friends over at PrizePicks. We'll talk about them later, but first, we need to talk about the Patriots' turnover-filled 21-14 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers this weekend. As you guys know, Patriots welcomed the Steelers to Gillette on Sunday, and while it looked like they were the better team for the majority of the 60 minutes out there, Taylor, the theme was those 5 turnovers. So we'll get into all of that. We'll do what we normally do to start the week, which is 3 reasons for optimism and 3 reasons where the Patriots can improve coming off of last week into this week. So we'll go through 3 of those on each side. But first, like we also do, is we're going to start with quarterback Drake May, who, despite 2 turnovers of his own, he had the interception to end the first half, and then he had that second half strip sack fumble, which was unfortunate. But outside of that, he still looked pretty good, Taylor. We talked about it on the postgame show, but we'll dive into it a little bit more here. He goes 28 of 37 for 268 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, also had 45 yards on the ground. He currently leads the Patriots in rushing, too. Him and Ramondre Stevenson tied for 45 yards apiece. Not a good thing, but in general, not a good thing when your quarterback's leading you in rushing, especially when it's a quarterback who, as we've talked about, we want to protect himself and not be the focal point, at least of the run game. But I digress. Drake May held himself fully accountable after the game. As we know, he takes these losses to heart, said that it essentially was his fault that they couldn't get it done. So before we get into optimism, concern, improvement, things of that nature. What did you think of Drake May overall in his 3rd start this season? It was a little bit up and down, but I would say that he was not the reason the Patriots lost this game.
He wasn't the reason, but he was part of it because of the turnovers. Now,
100%.
Like the first game was one where, I didn't feel great about Drake May's performance, and then I felt better after watching it further. Last week was a game where I was impressed and then came away just about as impressed after watching the film, because once you get the tape, you start looking at, okay, were there missed opportunities? Were there explanations for some of the things that I didn't really understand? Were there plays that I thought weren't great that ended up being worse, or what have you? So I don't want to hit any alarm bells per usual. And I feel like a lot of the times when we critique Drake May, people get really upset and think that we're saying like he's not good or he doesn't have the potential to be better. But I like to remind people that the reason we point out where Drake May could improve is that so when he does make those improvements, we can go back and say, hey, look at this young quarterback learning from his mistakes. And then everybody can, celebrate the young gun and it'll all be fun. So with that being said, I'll start with the positives. So biggest thing that stood out to me was obviously the scrambling ability, which we'll get to later, and how dangerous he is with his legs, particularly for moving pockets. But there were also some really impressive completions, especially downfield on 3rd downs where he completes the one to Kayshon Boutte. He also has another one to Hunter Henry. And these are like long yardage situations, just like last week, where Drake doesn't seem like he's in over his head. You see the confidence when he has a clean pocket to step up, to do what he's got to do to move defenders if he has to, and then to rip it into tight windows. So you did see that. Also, very impressed with how he uses his eyes in the quick game, really in general, but especially the quick game, because I remember Mac Jones, his first year in Josh McDaniels' offense, the number of times he had close calls because a defense would call a trap coverage where they're throwing the stick and he's kind of staring at it, and then smart linebackers would just buzz under it or cornerbacks would jump it. And we saw that, I think, against the Dolphins and against the Bills. Drake, though, has a very good feel for, okay, I need to make sure I'm looking down the pipe, because if I glance over here, that linebacker is probably going to influence the throwing window. He's really quick when he has to make adjustments, whether it's looking guys off or kind of giving little pump fakes to move defenders. Does it in the quick game. Also, like I said, in the downfield passing game as well. Like there was one throw, he tried to target Kyle Williams on a curl route, and it looked like he was holding onto the ball and maybe wasn't decisive because he wound up having to get out of a sack and ultimately fell into another one. But really, and this is something you've seen him before, he tried to pump the flat, which created the window to Kyle Williams. And then as he threw, this was after he got strip sacked, I'm pretty sure, he kind of, as Watt was coming around, or I'm sorry, it was Nick Herbig had beaten Will Campbell inside.
Again?
Yeah, I think he starts feeling pressure, and then kind of it looks like a pump, but really he's tucking it. So I love his ability to manipulate defenders, also bouncing back from that strip sack and being more aware in the pocket. And also that dot to Henry. Now, I did think there was a missed opportunity there, which we'll get more into, but I mean, that vertical out of the backfield, putting it on the top shelf, that was some really impressive stuff from Drake May. I will say in the negatives, there were a couple plays where he should have been intercepted. There was the one where he got bailed out kind of by illegal contact where he threw directly to Chuck Clark. Now, yes, Hunter Henry falling down because he was contacted by a chasing defender had some large part to do with that. But what I didn't love was the fact that Stephon Diggs, because of that contact, was wide open on a slant underneath. And Drake is looking in that area. I've never played quarterback, so I don't know exactly how wide your vision is and how quickly you're supposed to see those things, but it was pretty glaring that it wound up almost being an interception, and instead, you had an underneath receiver there. Also, on the throw to Demario Douglas, where it was dropped, that was just a high miss. Mm-hmm. I don't really know whether he was expecting Pop to do one thing or another, but either way, I don't think Pop had any shot at catching that no matter what path he had taken. And really with Drake, that's the most concerning thing to me. The decisions I'm going to point out, but I'm not really too worried about those things. Even when I nitpick about some missed opportunities, like those are the things that young quarterbacks learn. That's what the first couple years are for. It's more the inaccuracy that really makes me nervous because I don't know if it's something that you fix, because it's something that we did see consistently in this college tape. We didn't so much last year. That is, pretty encouraging, but it wasn't totally absent. It happened sometimes. And this season, we're seeing more of it. I don't know if it's because of a mental thing, because he is still adjusting to maybe a more complex offense. I'm not trying to start the whole debate again of, is there too much
on his plate?
No, it's not that. But it is, I think he's comfortable in this offense for the most part. Still has plenty of room to grow. But again, the inaccuracy and the high misses are very alarming because, as we've seen, those can turn into disastrous plays. But yeah, for the most part, thought it was a solid performance. Have to cut down again on the turnover-worthy plays. This felt more like last year Drake May than this year Drake May, who's done a much better job in those situations. And there were times where he probably could have hit bigger plays where he settled for what wound up being shorter games. But again, I just hope that next week there's some examples of maybe him getting similar opportunities and capitalizing on them.
Yeah, it's the turnovers that for me. I mean, I think it's the turnovers for pretty much everybody, but you see his understanding of this offense continuing to grow, where from week one, it looked like he was, I know we joked just then about the too much on his plate. It did kind of look like he was working, 200 miles a minute in that first game against the Raiders. And he's gotten better week by week as far as, where his eyes are, where he's going with the football, etc. But last week in Miami, didn't turn the ball over. This week has obviously the 2 turnovers. And the second one was obviously detrimental to them because they were driving. They're going to take the lead, give the ball to Pittsburgh, and then they end up winning the game off. So that's got to stop. I know it. I tweeted about it yesterday, and while many people agreed, a lot of the comments were, well, yeah, no shit, buddy. Of course the turnover's got to stop. But it's like, you got to talk about it because that's the one thing that's really holding him and this team back. And as we know, the 5 turnovers across the board were what held them back as well. And then the connection with Pop Douglas is something that I'm curious to see how and if that gets flushed out throughout the rest of the season, because you mentioned the high throw to him. He still hasn't been able to get on the same page, whether Pop is running the right route and Drake is getting the ball to the area, it's high. And on the other end, they're just, Pop sitting, Drake's throwing through him and vice versa. They need to figure it out, or something's got to change there. So, we'll get through that. We'll talk about, Pop's status in this receiver room and such probably throughout the rest of the week here on the show. But we got to get to optimism and improvement from this past game, which we're talking about Drake May and his understanding of the offense. One of the areas for optimism here, Taylor, that we're going to talk about right now is Josh McDaniels and the offensive play calling. Josh got in his bag a little bit this week. A ton of 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. Saw your first empty set. I saw you were very excited for that on Twitter the other day.
Boss Juke, baby, it's back.
Exactly. So there was also the sequence on the goal line with the three passes in a row down there in the red zone, and then they obviously intercept it. Mike Vrabel said that they didn't like the look to run the football, and that's why they went with the pass. So at least coach offensive coordinator on the same page there. That's one we still had questions on. But overall, they split the pass and the run a little bit better this week as well, I thought. They actually were able to hand the ball off. Now, I know 7 carries were from Drake. So there's a little discrepancy there. But thought it was better from Josh this week. And it seems like the offense continues to grow, evolve, continue to be a game plan offense. And like we said, Drake May continues to have that understanding. So what did you see offensively? Why are you optimistic of where it is, where it can grow, and what they're doing heading into this week as they take on the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, Josh did really well this week. I love what he's doing with the 2 tight end sets. And I know there's been a lot of talk about, the lack of Pop's involvement, which, yes, it is a bit alarming considering what we expected from him. But really what the 2 tight end sets are doing is basically they're moving Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry around so that on almost every single play from those formations, the Patriots, especially in shotgun where they're more obvious passing situations, Josh is giving Drake coverage indicators where he'll put Austin Hooper all the way outside with 2 receivers inside, and then it's pretty automatic. You just don't see that look very often, so it forces the defense to show if they're in man coverage or if they're in zone coverage. And there are some defenses, like even the Steelers, had a pretty nice change up where sometimes you'll have the tight end by themselves and then the safety's out there. And the Patriots used to do this all the time where sometimes I'd have a Dante Hightower chase the guy outside. Right. And it looks like man, but really it's some kind of zone coverage where they're just giving that defender a shorter field responsibility. Or if it's a safety, they'll ask them to cover the deep part of the field so that it's not that same kind of awkward situation where they're having to play in uncomfortable spots. But more specifically, so when they were under center, the 12 personnel really set up all the play actions and the run game. Even though the run game was inconsistent, you saw one of the moving pockets, which worked very well for Drake May, kind of setting up outside zone looks so you could get bootlegs off of it, different receivers underneath, and not just the bootlegs, but also the fake bootlegs that allow you to throw downfield. So when Drake May was under center, he was 5 for 7 for 40 yards, which isn't awesome because, again, a lot of those throws were short. He had a touchdown, a scramble, and 4 total conversions. That include Hunter Henry's touchdown, where they had the fake. Hunter Henry kind of delays late, and then he goes out and catches the touchdown. That was a really well-designed play. Looked exactly like a run because you had Matt Collins coming behind the formation. It's kind of a sniffer. You had the pre-snap check and everything like that. So that was really well sold. Hollins actually got open twice on Diggs. There was one completion. There was another one where he was not targeted. And also got wide open on a deep corner that Drake, I think, wound up going to Hunter Henry instead. But there were some opportunities. Like Vrabel mentioned in cuts. He talked about Stephon Diggs, but Mac Hollins had a few opportunities, again, also on a deep corner to maybe make some bigger plays. Also, I thought that I don't know why, he didn't pull the trigger on that guitar fake where Austin Hooper coming down, but still, I felt like there was a window to throw that. Wasn't exactly sure why he didn't. But then when they were in shotgun, that's where you had the dot to Hunter Henry on the vertical. I will say this is one where when they were in 12, I thought there were times where Drake, in the shotgun at least, so the obvious pass situations, I thought that Drake was locking in on Hunter Henry at times where they were matching the 12 with base personnel or Jabril Peppers, and they'd have Peppers covering wide receivers. There was one where Diggs ran an out route against Peppers where he was at the goal line. And I know the leverage advantage wasn't there. I'd still target Stephon Diggs against 100%. Jabril Peppers. And there was also one where I believe it was Mac Hollins was running a crossing route, and he was wide open for a touchdown, but Drake wound up going underneath to Hunter Henry. These were both solid gains for the Patriots, but even still, I thought there were much bigger plays to be had. But that's also the PhD level where that's Tom Brady, right? If he sees any of those mismatches, he's finding them immediately and then just picking you apart and making you pay for doing that. I'm not sure Drake May is quite to that point. And it makes sense that he trusts Hunter Henry more than everybody else. Hunter Henry is getting so much of this offense funneled through him that it makes sense. But I do wonder if Josh is telling him, hey, if you just like the matchup, take it, or if there's more options for Drake May in the progression. But I guess I just like to see that improvement. Also, like you mentioned, we saw empty for multiple tight end sets where it looks like a run formation. You spread everybody out, usually have a wide receiver like Stephon Diggs at the number 3 spot. There were 2 completions that he had to slants. Those were pretty easy throws that went for first downs. There was Haas twice. There was one where Drake threw high to Austin Hooper. Could have been a chunk gain, but it wound up getting knocked out. So want to see him be more accurate there. But he did take a profit when Travion Henderson split out. Ran just a little hitch against zone coverage. But, hey, that's one of your fast playmakers. Just get the ball in his hands. That went for a solid gain. So I really like the multiple tight end sets, the mismatches, the way that when they were under center, Josh was scripting things where there were motions and looks they used, where all these things looked the same, but there'd be minor tweaks, and then he'd run something else off of it. Like anybody who thinks Josh McDaniels is not a good offensive coordinator, is not someone who is adjusting to the talent around him, telling you right now, you're absolutely wrong. It was really fun to try to pick apart how he was scripting things. Like, I'm just telling you, watch games and see how many times you see formations that look the same and the ways that Josh ends up blending those together to put defenses in bad spots. So the 12 personnel and the moving pockets that got Drake May 3 scramble conversions, should have had 2 chunk gains. There was the beautiful touch throw to Demario Douglas where they faked a boot. That was overturned because Mike and Money was downfield. Talk about that a little bit later. And then easy completions underneath to Hollins and Hunter Henry on bootlegs. Just making life easier for the young quarterback is something I think that Josh McDaniels has done a great job of, even if I think a lot of those opportunities haven't been maximized. Just give it time. This is a pairing, Drake May and Josh McDaniels, that is showing a lot of signs for optimism for Patriots fans. You just got to be patient for Drake to, make his young guy mistakes and then really get more comfortable in the offense as he gets older. But for the most part, I think Josh is doing a good job of scheming up opportunities for him and getting guys very open. I've heard some people say there's not a lot of separation. I don't necessarily. NFL separation is different from college separation, so I think maybe that can be confusing. But Josh killed it. Josh absolutely killed it last week.
It's 2 things there. One on the receivers. Yes, the Demario Douglas mishap on the 4th down. We'll talk about in a second here. Outside of that, though, the receivers really haven't been that bad. It hasn't been a glaring hole on this team like it has been in the last couple seasons. That's promising, and that also has to do with, like you just mentioned, the offensive coordinator scheming those guys open and also being on the same page with your quarterback. Outside of the pop stuff, it's been pretty solid there so far. And then as far as the play calling, like you mentioned, able to move the pocket and get him out on bootlegs and things of that nature. That's the type of stuff that we saw Josh do with Cam Newton. Now, they kind of hit the ground running and the offense fizzled out at the end of that season. This time, it's Drake May who's trying to learn the offense. Drake's trying to learn what this guy can do. There's not a ton of tape on him where there was a bunch of Cam Newton tape, and Josh was kind of able to grind out what he saw from that and then implement that into the offense. They're still learning. They're still growing. This is a long-term marriage, too, versus the Cam and Josh one, which are short-term. So good stuff all around for Josh McDaniels. Do you have something else before we moved on?
Also, just important, we talk about the wide receiver thing.
Yeah.
Drake, when he's throwing downfield, it's very clear that he's only very comfortable throwing to Kayshon Boutte when we're talking about more than 15 yards. Because Stephon Diggs has really been more of an underneath guy. We thought he'd be intermediate to short, but, so far he's really been more of a chain mover in, medium to short yardage situations. But Drake knows his tight ends. He can just kind of put the ball on their body. They can go up and get it and make these crazy plays. That's a big reason. And also, the tight ends have Josh McDaniels' trust because they've already been in this offense. I think the wide receiver stuff's a little overblown because not only are they open on plays where they're just not getting the ball sometimes, but Drake and Josh are both very comfortable with the tight ends, and a lot of this offense does run through them, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. It'd be one thing if Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper are just missing all these opportunities, but for the most part, they've been valuable members of this offense. And outside of Kayshon Boutte, it's not like anybody is winning so consistently that I'm like, you have to throw them the ball. Matt Collins this week definitely did. But it's really just Boutte where I'm like, I feel like there's some easy opportunities you have sometimes where he's one-on-one, but just want to dispel some of the confusion as to what are the wide receivers doing? Look at the tight. Actually, I'll look up the tight end stats really quick. You can talk while I do it, but I want to see how they're doing because I'm sure that they're probably near the top of the league. At least Hunter Henry is in a lot of receiving numbers.
Find that out. I also want to ask you this, Taylor, and this kind of came across my desk, for lack of a better term. One of my buddies texted me after the game and was like, why are they dialing up the 4th down play to Demario Douglas in that situation? This has to do with the play calling aspect and the angle we're kind of going with here, where, again, it is optimism. But this one, looking back on it, it kind of irked me too, where this is a player who Drake and him haven't been on the same page. And I don't think we focused on it as much because A, the ball got there, and B, it looked like Pop did have a chance to get the 1st down. So the fact that the play was called that way wasn't as bad as the actual execution. But you mentioned Drake has all this rapport with these tight ends. You also mentioned that, Stephon Diggs has been good underneath on quick routes. And him and Drake have hit these before. So I guess my question is, A, why didn't Josh rather dial this up to somebody else? Why did Drake go to Pop Douglas on such a gotta-have-it 4th down play when they haven't had that chemistry? I don't know if you know all the answers, but I wanted to kind of throw that out there and give you a chance to defend it, see what your thoughts are, because looking back on it, yes, like I said, the execution was the problem, not the actual play or the personnel, but you would think that maybe they could dial that up to somebody who they've been dependent on a little bit more so far this season.
So when Pop said like the play wasn't designed to do anything or whatever, it was a weird explanation, but it's because the Steelers blitzed. So he wasn't like, it's not like in the route progression, he's first. You almost never have a flat route as your first read. I'm pretty sure it was a stick where he probably would have thrown to the number 3 receiver, but because Drake got that blitz, he had to get the ball out immediately, and Pop was in the vacated area. And Mike Vrabel talked about how they specifically talked about that situation. So sometimes you talk about like coaching, is it the coach's fault? And when you hear things like that, where the coach is like, we repped it, it's kind of like, all right, feels like the player just made a bad decision. So, you know,
I still put it on Pop more than the play call and the execution. That's
we'll talk more about that as well. But it was, I don't think it's that Drake, you know, that was dialed up to go to Pop. It's just when you blitz from that spot and Pop is there, it was the right read. It's just he didn't capitalize on the opportunity.
All right. Anything on tight end before we move on?
Oh, yes. Hunter Henry, among tight ends with at least 10 targets, is currently 5th in yards per reception, and he is tied for 8th in receptions, but he's tied for 5th in targets. So he's top 10 in pretty much every major metric. So that's where your production's going. And I don't really think anybody's mad that Hunter Henry is getting the ball. If anything, I wouldn't say he should be getting the ball more because of what I said earlier. There are opportunities elsewhere, but you know, Hunter Henry's still doing what he's got to do, even if he isn't the explosive threat that he used to be.
100%. All right, let's get to the elephant in the room. It's the topic of this game. It's the reason why, frankly, we're having to break down a loss instead of a win. And it's the self-inflicted mistakes. It's a major reason for improvement. Or I guess area for improvement on this Patriots team. The obvious one was the 5 turnovers, the interception, and then 4 fumbles. Taylor Drake May fumbles, Antonio Gibson fumbles, Ramondre Stevenson fumbles twice. We've talked about that. Caleb on Chason also lines up off sides on defense. The Pop Douglas 4th down is a mistake that we mentioned. You got to either run your route to the sticks or you got to knife up field instead of trying to make a guy miss on 4th and 2. Drake May's strip sack we'll talk about as well. And I know we'll get to Mike Onwenu later on here in the run blocking aspect of this show, but he was also downfield on a pass play. Can't have that happen either. So a lot of these self-inflicted wounds and mistakes. Mike Vrabel seems to, at least through the media, sort of be backing Ramondre Stevenson a little bit. I know they'll probably go through what they want to do. If they bench him, do they keep him? I know we talked about it on the postgame show with John. And Greg mentioned this too when he came on before us, that you can't just give the entire running back share to Travion Henderson as a rookie right now. It's just not going to happen. You do need to rely on these guys. You've talked about Mondre's their best pass blocking back. He's their 3rd down back. So that's kind of where we're at right now. A lot of failures and, again, self-inflicted wounds from this team that if they didn't turn the ball over, even if they only turned the ball over 3 times instead of 5 times, they might have won this football game. So they only scored 14 points, and it's because of these turnovers twice in the red zone on the goal line. How do they fix it? What do you make of it? How serious is it? And how fixable are these turnovers from the Patriots? And, again, the other mistakes that we talked about.
Yeah, so Mike Vrabel, we'll talk about the strip sacks. I think that was probably the most egregious because that was just like a full, I don't want to say full, that's the way to phrase it. It was just a breakdown, a brain fart from Drake.
Yeah.
Because Mike Vrabel talked about the timing element. So the Steelers had 5 pass rushers, like 5 guys that you would anticipate being pass rush threats. Patriots had chips on both edges, but even still, that means that you probably have, once those chips, you know, are done, it only slows them down. It's not like you're keeping those guys in. So it was 5 on 5. That's not a great matchup, especially when you have like Cam Hayward and there's a lot of explosive athletes all over the Steelers offensive line. So it was solid protection at first. Like, it wasn't perfect, but you have to understand that it's not going to be perfect against some defensive lines. You just got to make the best of what you can. And there was time. Now, it was a vertical concept where I know some people thought that he could have thrown to Hunter Henry down the seam. Maybe, but there was a post safety right there. I'm not upset that Drake didn't throw it. What I'm upset with is that he decided that not only was he going to try to extend the play longer than he should have, he tried to flick it out, wound up getting strip sacked. And when I asked Mike Vrabel, like, where's the line? Because he tried to do that a couple weeks ago as well. It's just knowing, you know, this is not a situation where I can make that kind of play. And obviously he paid for it. So that's not the worst thing in the world, but that's one where Drake, you know, he's gotten stripped before. It was a big problem last year. You just got to be smarter in those situations. And fumbles in general, non-negotiable. I understand that Vrabel, and we'll talk about this later, you have to protect the guy with the ball. Completely understand. But we already know that Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson do have a history of fumbles. So look, I'm not going to get into the weeds. I don't know the mechanics of not fumbling the football outside of, the high and tight, like all that stuff that people usually talk about. You just got to do it. And that's just pretty point blank period. I don't need to bash you guys over the head with it. You all understand, but it's a self-inflicted mistake that has to be corrected. The interception, another goof. Just another goof.
Yeah.
It's not one that I think Drake will ever do again. And although he does have a lot of batted passes, he has a batted pass, at least one in every game this season. So I don't know what exactly is going on there, but on that play specifically, and it's funny because the motion that Demario Douglas does, where he kind of goes one way and then returns back, he got caught. And I don't know what happened there, but he ended up kind of running between Will Campbell and Nick Herbig, which was funky. But it was targeting Jalen Ramsey on the same motion that Devontae Adams beat him in the playoffs like years ago when Devontae was with the Packers and Ramsey was with the Rams. And it actually did get Kayshon Boutte wide open because Ramsey got caught inside. The flat defender, the outside defender, wound up kind of biting on Pop's route. And it may just put some touch on that throw.
Wide
easy
open.
Touchdown. So one of those plays that you just absolutely have to have back. That's pretty much it with Drake. The penalties, yeah, like Chason being offsides 2 weeks in a row and 3 times in 2 weeks, that's unacceptable, dog. I don't know what's going on there, but that just got to get nipped in the bud. It's not like it was a game-changing penalty, but again, we're talking about just not beating yourself first before you can beat anybody else. That's the kind of thing that is the definition of beating yourself. Mike Nwenu was trying to influence, I think, the linebacker, which is why he wound up getting so far downhill and realized nobody else was around him.
I'm laughing at his trot back when he was like, "Whoops, I'm too far."
It was an up and down day for Mike Nwenu, but that was one where it's just like, dude, that's a big play that got taken off the board. And not only did you not get the chunk, you went backwards. So you can't have that kind of penalty. And then, of course, the Demario Douglas fourth down where Mike Vrabel talking about revolutions. I don't really know what that means. I don't know if that's like
I thought he meant like another step, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
Because it was like bananaing, so he would have ended up at the sticks if he threw it like a little bit farther out or if he was farther in his route. That's the only thing I could get out of that. Revolutions, I think, like on the football, like another spin. But
I didn't totally get that. But he was saying if it was like one guy, what Pop did wouldn't have been egregious. But when it was 2 and we all saw he catches it, there's that little pocket of space where you just got to try to go get the first down. And he did.
Yeah.
That's like another awareness thing. So
right.
The awareness from players to not get penalized in ways that are pretty egregious. And I even try to be generous with like the defensive pass with Alex Austin's calls, even though we got pulled for it. I don't know why you have Alex Austin covering Darnell Washington in that situation when Darnell Washington could like eat Alex Austin. That was kind of weird to me. And I also thought it was a bad call to begin with, even if Austin was kind of grabby. And then there was defensive pass interference that wiped out the strip sack. Huge play, but also I feel like coaches don't get as upset with those. Like even the holding for Caleb on Chason, like, dude, that's very blatant and you can't do that. But people do that every week. So those kind of execution penalties, especially when Alex Austin probably shouldn't be starting anyway, I tried to give some benefit of the doubt. But you could also, if you want to be nitpicky, throw those into the umbrella of like, yeah, you can't do those because the strip sack was just brutal. Like that could have been a play that completely changed the momentum from the get-go. And you lose out on it, and then the Packers end up going downfield and scoring a touchdown. So just to recap again, biggest things, protect the football, and then just don't shoot yourself in the foot with penalties and just poor awareness.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get us ready for a transition here. So I lost my train of thought for a second. But I mean, I'm totally with you, and I think I like how you say like, what else are we going to say? Because I see everyone talking about, we'll talk about the turnovers and why are we optimistic and why are we giving this credit? It's like, what else are we supposed to say, right? Just don't turn the football over. Hold on. Like, we can't sit here and break down the entire thing. I know we will a little bit with the run blocking issues, but overall, it's just hold on to the football, line up on sides, don't go downfield on a passing play. Like, it's basic fundamental football rules that, again, so many brain farts in this game that ended up allowing them to only score 14 points. And granted, they only gave up 21. We'll talk about, some optimistic stuff on the defensive side. But, like, what else are we supposed to say besides just stop turning the football over, protect the football? You have the entire franchise in your hand when you have the football. Like, it's pretty basic and it's glaring. And it's something that I hope and think Mike Vrabel and the rest of the coaching staff are just on their ass about this week, because Vrabel's supposed to be this players coach, but also a hard-nosed coach, right? And I don't think he's lacking in the fundamentals department. I think he tries his best, and the staff should at least be trying their best to, not glance over that stuff. But it is concerning when that's kind of his MO and they're not getting it done.
And it was doubly disappointing because all of the fumbles except for Drake's came on what would have been big runs. Like Ramondre, right. This is a great comment. Ramondre gets a lot of hidden yards, and that's exactly what he was doing on both of those. Like you see him churning ahead, trying to make it like every inch out of it, ends up fumbling. Then the one at the goal line where he gets immediate penetration and has a great effort to get past the line of scrimmage, period, fumbles. Antonio Gibson, well blocked, had a big chunk of yards, fumbles. Like, not only did they give the ball up, obviously it's more important they gave the ball, but it also took what would have been really positive gains and solid momentum for the offense. And like Mike Vrabel said, you just wipe out all the good things you do when you do turn the ball over. And another part of it is, like, in why I say, we can only talk about it so much. There's an idiom in coaching and scouting. If you want players that tackle good, draft players that tackle good.
Right.
If you want players that don't fumble, draft or sign players that don't fumble. Like that, that's what it is. We always hope the players can grow and change. That's part of what makes the NFL fun. And, we all have hope, especially when you have a guy like Ramondre who, does the right thing most of the time, except for when he doesn't, and it's just so detrimental. So, that's why we are saying you just have to do it, because if it continues, then the answer is, I'm sorry. You probably just have to next year invest in players that have a history of not fumbling. And then, of course, you could have a Jalen Polk situation where the guy's been good catching his entire career and then can't. That stuff happens too. But, there's only so much you can say when someone has a fumbling problem.
100%. All right, we got a couple more here, a couple more for improvement, a couple more for optimism. A little bit of Patriots news. Patriots had a couple of free agents in for workouts today. Two of which are wide receivers are the two names I noticed. For Kim Jarrett from Maryland and Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son from USC, came into New England for a workout today. So don't know if they'll sign. We'll see what happens. They do have the open roster spot. They made some practice squad moves today. So we'll keep our eyes out on that. But again, it's just 4 workouts. The other one's tight end Drake Dabney and offensive tackle Aiden Williams from Minnesota Duluth. So
also, Jordan Schultz reported that the Patriots called about Jarvis Brownlee, who the Titans just traded to the Jets earlier today, which could signal that they, which pretty obviously are concerned about their cornerback depth because they just had to bench Alex Austin, which, I'm hoping is just a one-game thing where it's like, hey, man, you just aren't locked in. We got to give somebody else another opportunity. Charles Woods was solid, but he's also not somebody that you want out there if he has to play an entire game necessarily, because you got him on waivers just at the end of the summer.
100%. All right, we'll get to the rest of the show here, but first, I got to tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best place to get in on the action. As you guys know, this episode and every episode of Patriots Daily is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make these decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. So don't miss out on any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. We hit our Patriots Daily picks this week on Prize Picks. We had Drake May to have more than 234 yards passing. That hit. We also had the free square, Patrick Mahomes, more than half a passing yard. That hit. And then the other one was the Steelers. Oh, that's what it was. TJ Watt to have more than a quarter of a sack. He did take down Drake May at one point in this game. So we hit that lineup. We're going to roll it over throughout the rest of the season on Prize Picks. As you guys know, and as I've told you, they put their users first with withdrawals that are fast, safe, and secure. They offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account. So if you want to get in on the action with us, download the app today. Use that code CLNS. You get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. You see it on the screen right there. Again, use code CLNS. You will get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right. We went optimism with McDaniels. We went improvement with the self-inflicted mistakes. Let's stay on the down here, Taylor. Stay on the offense and talk about the run blocking. Now, it had to do with the fumbles. Mike Vrabel said it best when he was asked about it, not on Sunday after the game, but on Monday. He was asked about Stevenson, how you attack it, what's the, the philosophy there. And he said, well, we need to protect the person carrying the football. It doesn't matter if it's the quarterback. It doesn't matter if it's the running back, wide receiver. And in the run game specifically, they did average over 4 yards a carry, But as you mentioned, there were missed blocks on all 3 fumbles from the running backs. So how do they improve? Mike Onwenu specifically, I also mentioned the downfield. He's downfield. Onwenu wasn't great on Sunday, or at least was up and down. So what did you see from the run game? How can they fix that, get it going? Because this was kind of supposed to be an MO of this team as well, was getting the ground game going. And if it can't happen up front, it can't happen behind the line.
And look, I will start with some positives. One, most of the successful runs were behind Morgan Moses. Some of them were there was a combo with Onwenu, 1 or 2 combos with Austin Hooper. He's had some devastating combos with Austin Hooper the past couple of weeks. So that's at least a positive, especially in the downhill kind of man blocking scheme that we know they like to run. It didn't see as much power or pulling linemen as we did last week. Also, there was a wham block where they just blew a hole open for Ramondre Stevenson on his fumbles. So you definitely started to see some positive.
Wait, Taylor, let me cut you off. When we were in the press box for those ones behind the scenes, we're sitting next to each other, and Stevenson goes up the middle. They execute it. Taylor immediately goes wham, and then Stevenson. I was like, oh wow, nice game, whatever. And he fumbles, and Taylor just goes, oh no, like wham. Oh boy, oh no, like in a 3-second span. It happened right in front of us. It was devastating.
Wham, bam, no thank you, ma'am.
Exactly.
But yeah, so more specific. So those are the positives. I thought Morgan Moses looked good. They got a little bit better on outside zone, I will say. And look, I understand the yards per carry. We got to stop judging a run game strictly by its yards per carry. I look at more through efficiency and explosiveness, because 4 yards per carry can mean very different things. Like 100%. That can come from one very good run, and then you're actually just running into a brick wall the rest of the time. I'm not saying that's what happened, but 2 weeks in a row, although the Patriots have been better, there's more good than bad, and they are the worst and least efficient running team in the NFL. So again, I don't really give a shit how many yards they're averaging. There is absolutely room for improvement, and I highly doubt Mike Vrabel's going to protect his players. I don't think any of the players would say that they're satisfied, especially since Mike Onwenu himself called the offensive line out after Vrabel defended them for being like, yeah, we had some missed opportunities, and there were. So let's talk about the fumbles. Mike Onwenu missed a climb on Ramondre's first fumble, and that defender wound up punching the football out. There was another play on Ramondre's second fumble where Onwenu wound up completely whiffing on his block and wound up on the ground. Jared Wilson wasn't able to sustain a block against Cam Hayward, who ultimately punched the ball out. I really hesitate to give a guy like Jared Wilson, who's naturally a center, too much crap when you're one-on-one with Cam Hayward. Like, I'll be critical when I need to, but that's just a tough matchup for any rookie because that is grown man strength. But still, Cam Hayward did pop out the ball, so you can't just give Jared Wilson a free pass necessarily. But there was a missed block there. There was one more missed block on that play as well. Oh, I think it was Austin Hooper who missed a block. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was Antonio Gibson on his play. Austin Hooper missed on a block. There was also, who was it? I'm sorry. Let me look through my notes. Afraid on Antonio Gibson's block. But Antonio Gibson's block. Oh, that was it. I'm sorry. Mac Hollins.
Oh, yeah.
I want to give him some benefit of the doubt because it was inside zone. I think Hollins might have been expecting the run to bounce outside of him and was trying to maybe set Jabril Peppers up. But Peppers wound up filling so fast, and credit to him. Like, this is why Jabril Peppers, we never said he was a useless player or anything like that. He's just more limited than he's probably been in the past, where he charges down, puts contact right on the ball, and pops it out. I don't know how much at fault Hollins would be from the coach's perspective, but you'd at least like to see him engage Peppers so the guy didn't have a free run at the football. So those were concerning, but there were also gaps all over the place, like Mike Onwenu. So I had him missing a climb on the first fumble and missing a block on the second. He didn't sustain on multiple downhill runs, which is kind of his whole thing. I was pretty disappointed by that. And he allowed penetration against a blitz on a tackle for loss. It was Patrick Queen, who's very fast, but even still, it's tackle for loss, so I can't, give him a mulligan for it. Positives from Onwenu, though, were he did have key blocks on 3 different outside zone runs. That was a positive for him after not doing very well on outside zone runs last week. There was a combo with Campbell and Bradbury, and then there was a climb that he had effectively. But yeah, too many mistakes for Mike Onwenu, a guy who you expect to be dominant. I just don't think he's been nearly consistent enough. I think that's a big reason the run game hasn't been very consistent. Garrett Bradbury wound up on the ground 3 times, including 2 times where he was trying to block Patrick Queen. He also couldn't cut off Hayward on a toss where Hayward wound up catching up to the running back from the backside. Positives for Garrett Bradbury, had a strong combo with Jared Wilson on the first carry of the game. They got really good push. Also, there was a key block that he had on a third quarter toss play. And just the short yardage stuff was good from the Patriots. I want to give them their credit there. That may have also affected their efficiency, which I do want to acknowledge. But, tip of the cap in short yardage, but outside of short yardage, they were much more inconsistent. And even then, like Ramondre Stevenson had to make multiple players miss to convert on one of his, I think it was a speed option toss. So it's not like they were necessarily perfect there from a blocking perspective. Jared Wilson did struggle to sustain one-on-one. Again, when we do talk about whether Jared Wilson should stay at guard or center, sometimes him against power, and granted, he has been in an NFL program one offseason. Maybe another year he could bulk up and get stronger. But this year, sometimes I'm like, maybe he would be at center just because, like in college, he doesn't generate a ton of power on his own at times. Combos, there are definitely some very good ones when they're concentrated, but some of the solo blocks aren't quite good enough. He also missed a couple of blocks on climbs. Positives for Jared Wilson, he had key blocks on 2 successful tosses and good push on outside zone with Campbell and on a man blocking scheme, like I mentioned earlier, with Garrett Bradbury. Will Campbell, though, he was up and down. There was one rep where I think it was a toss where he didn't block anybody, and Mike Vrabel seemed pretty pissed off on the sideline and was like, "What are you doing? Go block that guy." But to his credit, there were 2 4th-and-1 conversions where he blocked multiple guys. There was one where he got a chip, then blocked one linebacker into another, and then there was another play where he got blocks on a couple of guys. So those were impressive. Also had a strong outside zone combo, but he did have missed blocks on a couple of tosses and didn't sustain on an outside zone combo with Cam Hayward. So the run game is usually not going to be perfect, right? It's the NFL. It's very difficult. But usually in the run game, a good day is if you are being successful on at least 50% or more of your runs. Patriots haven't done that the past couple weeks. There's been more bad than good. So maybe I'm being nitpicky, but I think that a big part of helping your young quarterback is being an effective run team. And Mike Vrabel loves his stats. And, maybe we disagree on what stats are valuable. EPA and all those things aren't perfect either because, like, for example, on EPA, a quarterback sneak is not a successful run. Like, if you are converting in short yardage, it isn't always necessarily considered positive. But I think even by the eye test, it's very obvious that the Patriots aren't consistently doing well in run blocking. And also, I'll be honest, I don't think Travion Henderson specifically has looked very good running the ball.
No, he hasn't.
I feel like his pacing isn't very good. I don't think he's setting up blockers. It feels like he's either too hesitant at times or he's kind of just on one track and running into blockers. So that's been pretty disappointing, I'll say. And I think that's one reason. Sometimes Antonio Gibson also, especially on outside zone, just feels like he's running and just like kind of like in Madden where it's better when you don't hit turbo. You kind of let the blocks work out and then you hit it. I feel like he is hitting turbo as soon as he gets the ball a lot of the times, and it doesn't allow blocks to develop. So while the run blocking could be better, I also think that outside of Ramondre Stevenson, and Antonio Gibson did have some very good downhill runs, but I feel like some of the vision and patience isn't there, specifically on outside zone. So not just the blocking, it is a pretty wide ranging problem that is partially because this is still a pretty young unit with 2 rookies on the left side. But my biggest thing is Garrett Bradbury kind of winds up on the ground a little bit too much, and I feel like he slips off blocks, even though he's boom or bust, where he'll have some really impressive blocks, but also some bad ones. And I just need more consistency for Mike Nwenu because while, yes, he does look like his vintage self at times, I would say more often than not, I'm disappointed by what I'm seeing from his run blocking tape.
Yeah, it hasn't been great. Some of it's the self-inflicted mistakes with Nwenu we talked about. Others is just simple execution. And from the running back angle too, I know that yards per carry by far is not the only barometer. But talk about Travion Henderson, he paced them in carries. He only had 28 yards. He averaged like 2.5 a carry, but his long was only 5 too. So that's not really skewed in there either. So.
Also, let me see what they're averaging when you take out scrambles, because I don't think it'll be the same. Scrambles are like when Drake May is leading the team rushing yards, it's not because of design runs, because we know they don't run a ton of those, which I think is smart, especially against the Steelers, because Justin Fields got buried one week.
You're looking at 4.1 a carry, but Drake had 6.4 average, and his long was 15 on a scramble. So, that's obviously skewing it, right?
Yeah, they averaged 3.2 yards when you take out scrambles this week. And then I'll look at last week. It would have been, they've never averaged more than 4 yards on non-scrambles. Sorry.
Can't have it.
Yeah, so not saying specifically to Vrabel. I know he's protecting his players, but people in the comments, respectfully, I love you all. You could stuff that stat because it's not accurate.
100%. It's one of the very skewed stats. So they got to fix the run game from the trenches, from the backs. But let's keep it in the trenches and let's flip it to an optimistic side of the football. It's the defensive side, specifically this defensive line, Taylor. The D-line continues to dominate. Milton Williams looks to be the prize free agent acquisition that we hoped for. They did not sack Aaron Rodgers, but they did have a handful of impactful plays, specifically in the second half. And it wasn't, I mentioned Milton Williams off the top, but it wasn't just Milton Williams. It was across the board from, as we know, Barmore, but Keon White popped a little bit. Chase on, despite the brain farts that we talked about earlier, he looked pretty good as well. Now brain fart's going to be in my vocabulary because I don't know what else to say for an F up, but they looked good on the defensive front. That looks to be the number one position group, if you will, on this defensive front. What did you see from on this defensive side of the ball? What did you see from those guys? Why do they continue to have the up arrow, in your opinion?
Yeah, so when you look at the Patriots pass rush stats, they're actually not great in a lot of metrics as a team. But what people need to remember is who they've actually been playing. You're playing Geno Smith, Tua Tagovailoa, and Aaron Rodgers. Geno is, he'll hold the ball sometimes. He's not a guy who, like the other ones, throws it very quickly.
Right.
But he generally throws on time. And the Raiders scheme had a lot of 6+ man protections where they were getting help, or at least chip blocks where it shows up as 5 pass blockers, but actually you're still getting help on the edges. Also, a lot of play action heavy schemes. And then Tua and Aaron Rodgers throw the ball faster than almost any other quarterbacks, if not every other quarterback in the NFL. Right. Patriots pass rush has not been getting a ton of opportunities. Now, I will say, Aaron Rodgers was getting that thing out so fast, it was almost impossible for the pass rush to make much of an impact. But like you said, impactful. I think that's the big thing, because Rodgers did not want to get hit. And it was obvious by some bad throws and obviously his interception. So just going player to player, Milton Williams technically didn't have any pressures in this game, 0 on 18 pass rushes. But when I looked at it, he had 1 pass rush that didn't involve play action or a quick throw. Now, can you still make an impact on those plays? Absolutely. I don't want to totally, discredit the fact that probably could have been better. But that's a tough world to be in when you have 1 opportunity where it's not basically schemed to beat the defensive line. But even though he didn't make an impact as a pass rusher as much, he did as a run defender. 2 tackles for loss or no gain, which was his season high. That included a 2nd and 1 stop at the goal line when the Patriots run defense kind of tightened up before ultimately letting up a touchdown. And he also blew up a 2nd and 20 run. He also freed up Gibbons. There was a double team where he just immediately split it, and Gibbons was able to work around him and get a stop of his own. So Milton Williams may not have been disruptive as a pass rusher this game. There was also a lot of rotating. We saw Corey Durden. We saw Joshua Farmer. We saw Kyrus Tonga. That was another reason that I don't think Milton Williams got quite as many opportunities to rush the passer. But again, at least we did see him make an impact as a run defender for a guy who was hailed as just being a pass rusher. Now, Christian Barmore did have a pressure on 17 pass rushes. He flushed Rodgers from the pocket on a failed 3rd and 5 where Rodgers tried to throw and it wasn't anywhere near Freiermuth. Although he was pissed at Freiermuth after. I think there was supposed to be some adjustment that he didn't make. He was very angry. Yeah. Also, Barmore got blown off the line of scrimmage a couple times as a nose tackle, but he also bounced back and had some strong efforts as well. I thought he was more positive than negative, but especially early on, he did get blown up a couple times. So not as much of an impactful game from Christian Barmore, but also you got to think about from that nose tackle spot, it's harder to make those impact plays. And we know he hasn't quite looked himself. Last week, I felt like I saw more of it, but this is not 2023 Christian Barmore, at least quite yet. That's just the reality, but still a quality player. Now, the guys who did make an impact, K'Lavon Chaisson had 2 quarterback hits, 1 on Aaron Rodgers' interception, and he buried Rodgers twice. These are some pretty violent hits. He had it on Aaron Rodgers' interception, also on an overthrown go ball to DK Metcalf against Carlton Davis. I believe that was the one where Davis drew the pass interference that didn't exist. And then Harold Landry, not only did he have a quarterback hit on a 3rd down incompletion, also made some plays as a tackler away from the quarterback. There was a screen that he immediately sniffed out and made a tackle on to blow up. And his forced fumble was a great effort play. It was a bootleg in his direction, got off the block, chased down the underneath outlet receiver and did get the ball out. Unfortunately, he accidentally kicked it, and that made it harder for the defense to actually recover. Usually I get very disappointed when teams don't take advantage of those chances, but that's one where it's just like, damn, sometimes literally ball doesn't bounce your way. But Harold Landry, like, even if he isn't consistently making an impact, every single week he's made some kind of big play for this defense, and I think there's something to say for that. And for the unit as a whole, where, again, you do play these quarterbacks where sometimes it minimizes your ability to make an impact, but they're still doing it in other phases of the game, and they're making big plays. And then Kyrus Tonga. I don't think
Shout out Kyrus Tonga.
Dude, no one's earning their money more than Kyrus Tonga. And I'm back and forth because I want to see him play more for sure. And maybe he mix him in. I think there were some times where he played over Barr more, which is understandable. Keep those guys fresh if you can. But, dude, he is disruptive as a run defender and as a pass rusher. He had 2 hurries on 8 pass rushes. One of those, he pushed the pocket on a play action incompletion. So one of those reps where it's tougher against play action, but he was single blocked and just put his guy on skates. Also had a hurry on a check down and didn't have any stats against the run. But again, he influenced Milton Williams' tackle for loss. And there was another one where he missed a tackle in the backfield, but then the Patriots were able to swarm and actually make it. That's another thing I will say on the tackling for this team. There are a lot of missed tackles, and it looks very bad. And we've addressed the ones that led to disasters. But I will say, I'm curious because Vrabel doesn't seem too
bogged down by it
necessarily, except for last week. But the swarming, and that's something he acknowledged. We talked about it before he even said it on the show, where there's very rarely a time where a guy will miss a tackle and there's not a second guy or third guy in to end up corralling and bringing that guy down. So could they come under more control at times? Yes. Like Marcus Jones missed some tackles. Christian Ellis obviously got benched for missing 2 tackles for loss. Like those were pretty brutal because he had the guy dead to rights. But I have liked the swarming that we've seen from this defense. Then some leftovers for the defensive line. Keon White had a limited role. He did struggle a couple of times on play action where he was blocked by 2 tight ends, but he did have one strong bull rush. Great effort on a screen, him and Corey Durden to chase one of those down, and he held his ground against a double team as well. So there were some things to like from Keon White, even if it wasn't a crazy impact. And Anthony Jennings, he knifed inside on one big run that the Steelers had. I thought he was expecting a blitz from Kyle Duggar that never came, and Duggar didn't seem to know where the ball was, so they ended up kind of gashing him. But unlike last week where the Dolphins, for some reason, were insistent on running right at Anthony Jennings, which was very unsuccessful, felt like the Steelers respected him more and very much tried to stay away outside of that bounced run. So that was pretty good to see that when Jennings is in the game, it feels like teams are more aware. At least the Steelers team was very aware of that. So most of this defensive line impact did come against the run because, again, not many pass rush opportunities, but Rodgers was feeling the heat on those true dropbacks where he did have to hold on to the ball, and I thought that the defense didn't always make the most of them, but did the best that they could in most instances.
It's so funny with Rodgers because you can tell when he's just like, well, shit hit the fan. I don't want to get sacked because I don't want to get hurt. I'm just gonna throw this ball kind of near someone, but in the middle of absolute nowhere, and it's like he doesn't give a shit that it takes down his completion percentage or whatever. That's something people have talked about with like. In basketball, they just changed that like half-court heaves don't count towards your shot percentage so that people will be less inclined. Or like I saw someone float the other day that Hail Marys shouldn't be against quarterbacks' completion percentage if they go down, like random stuff like that. But Rodgers clearly
doing so many Hail Marys it affects your stat line.
Right.
Unless it's Josh Allen in that one playoff game where he would have been like perfect, except for like what was that? Do you remember that? This is off topic, but that game, he literally like threw a touchdown and he lost his perfect passer rating because it was like 2 yards.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Well, and super off topic, but where I'm going with this was the Rodgers just kind of chucking it because he doesn't care. In basketball, like stat lines have to help or hurt your ability to be all NBA, and then at that point you get paid less or more if you make all NBA. So like it directly impacts what you can get paid. Football, it's different. It's simply a stat, but. Long story short, the D-line did affect Rodgers in that way. You saw it. They were the best part of the defense. But the back end, the secondary, still struggled. Linebackers, as we know, haven't been great all season long. We'll get to Robert Spillane at the end of the show here. But one area for improvement that we do need to talk about, and it really did specifically have to do with the secondary, was the red zone defense. So shout out to Mike Reese for this one, tweeted out earlier. But the Pats are currently 31st in red zone defense in the NFL. Teams have made 6 trips into the red zone. They've scored touchdowns on 5 of them. They've kicked a field goal on one of them. And Sunday against the Steelers, they scored 3 touchdowns on all 3 trips into the red zone. What did you see from these guys? And why do they have to improve, and what can they do outside of getting Christian Gonzalez back to improve the defense in the red area?
It'd be a big help.
Get him back. Yeah, right.
And look, I didn't want to put the defense on here, but I just couldn't. When you go 0-for-3 in the red zone,
right,
we got to talk about it, right? They did do very well for the most part, even if the run game was a bit up and down earlier on in the game. But yeah, the red zone defense was not good. So had the Alex Austin defensive pass interference, we talked about it again. Probably a very bad call. But also, it just feels like you could have gotten a better matchup for Darnell Washington. Even like Kyle Duggar, at least he's bigger,
right,
and at least is more physical. Alex Austin, that just feels like a bad matchup. I don't even think. I'm pretty sure Alex Austin's 5'11", but let me see it.
Yeah, he's tiny, and like you said, Duggar. It's like Duggar's been
6'1". He's 6'1", but Darnell Washington is like 6'6". And
he's probably double his weight. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just didn't love that matchup to begin with. So that's one where, yeah, maybe Christian Gonzalez helps because you feel a little bit more confident with that matchup, but I didn't necessarily love that play. Also, the toss play for a touchdown. Now, that was something we kind of saw. Remember we talked about Craig Woodson kind of got moved out of his gap. I think it was against the Raiders, and they scored a touchdown.
Yep.
Similar thing where they used jet motion that forced the Patriots to adjust. Craig Woodson kind of bumped inside. I think he was just too far inside, though, and wasn't able to chase down the running back. I don't know what the coaching point would be on that necessarily, because I don't know where he's supposed to line up. Like, that part is tough. But the fact that they didn't respond well enough to the motion that it created such an easy scoring opportunity for the Steelers, that needs to be adjusted. And Marcus Jones, like the Craig Davis touchdown, I'm not mad. Sometimes, like, the other guys get paid too. Rodgers threw a dot. Carlton Davis was all over it. DK makes a contested catch. I don't really know what I'm supposed to say about that. Like, maybe, yeah, Christian Gonzalez breaks that up, but it is what it is. But the Marcus Jones touchdown, he wasn't even competitive.
No.
And so it was cover one robber where Woodson was to Marcus Jones' side, but he came down to take away anything inside. So Marcus Jones had a true one-on-one, just gets toasted by Calvin Austin off the line of scrimmage, which is not something you see very often from Marcus Jones. I don't know. Like, maybe he was trying to mirror. I don't love saying, like, oh, why didn't you jam necessarily? Because I don't know what's in their head. Sometimes corners are setting things up throughout the game. Right. And Marcus Jones is usually fine when he's just mirroring guys, but that was not a competitive rep. And I don't necessarily know what the coaching point is in that one. Maybe I can ask Marcus in the locker room. But you can't give up touchdowns like that where the guy is just completely wide open, even if it was a dot from Aaron Rodgers. So it's up and down. I think that when you look at the tape, the red zone execution hasn't been that egregious. Like, I'm pretty sure the Jalen Hawkins touchdown against Trey Tucker is one of those scores that they let up. And it's like, yeah, that was a bad call. Like, I'm not positive if that was the red zone. I got to check. But
at least just outside. It was kind of deep, but
yeah,
regardless.
But in this game, like, it was a mixed bag. There were some plays where I'm just like, hey, I think he got some really tough breaks. But then there were a couple other ones where I feel like the execution probably could have been better. Specifically, again, the Marcus Jones game-sealing touchdown, and then Craig Woodson kind of getting bumped inside against motion and them giving up a toss for a touchdown.
And it's kind of the bend don't break philosophy that they need to get back to here, right? Because I mean, we talked about a post game where having the Patriots have to trudge down the field and get pinned back and be perfect for, an X play drive. Like, it's hard to do. And the Patriots have kind of gotten backed into the red zone. But when a team gets so far, that's when you kind of have to step up and be like, all right, we're not going to let them be right on 15 consecutive plays. And we even saw Milton Williams, we mentioned it before, talking about the defensive line, had an impact play, a run stuff at the goal line to help them potentially gain momentum down there. But then they just can't hold on long enough, and they end up giving up the touchdown. So it's
actually do have all 5 of the touchdowns they've given up.
Say that again?
I have all 5.
Go ahead.
So the first one was it was an Ashton Genty touchdown. That was the one where, again, I don't know if it was necessarily on Craig Woodson, but like, it was also a crazy effort from Ashton Genty on that play. Yeah. You could say the tackling could have been better, but it looked like he was down and he just kept his legs turning while very low to the ground. So that was a pretty impressive play. Then 2 weeks ago, you had the Alex Austin losing to Jalen Waddle, where we're like, yeah, that's one where you were saying that Christian Gonzalez is different. So I'm sorry, but if you talk about the Davis touchdown and the Jalen Waddle touchdown, those are 2 times where you're probably getting Christian Gonzalez on that guy, or at least some kind of a different matchup. So I'm sorry. Yeah, I do think that Christian Gonzalez makes a pretty significant difference. And I don't want to just hammer. Yeah, like I don't want to hammer the red zone defense when those are the touchdowns you're giving up against very talented players, some of the most explosive at their positions. But at the end of the day, it is still 5 touchdowns. So something's got to give, even if I'm not smart enough to know exactly what it is.
Well, then, Taylor, instead of continuing to hammer the defense, my vacuum just fell in my office, so I don't know why that just happened. But instead of continuing to hammer the back end of the defense, let's finish on an optimistic note. It's linebacker Robert Spillane. Now, the linebackers, as we know, we haven't been great this year. Christian Ellis got benched for Jack Gibbons on Sunday, but Bobby Spillane revenge game against these Pittsburgh Steelers gets after it. 14 tackles, the interception, which kind of got thrown into his chest by Aaron Rodgers, but he made the most out of it. He actually caught the ball, gave the Pats momentum out of halftime. And it looks like, at least after this game, that 3-year, $37 million contract for Spillane looks pretty good right now. So what did you see from the Patriots defensive captain? Is this a one-off after 2 poor games, or is this a trending in the right direction for the middleman, the green dot in this Patriots defense?
This game was more what I expected from Robert Spillane. Yeah. We're like, yes, there was the miss he had in space against Jalen Warren, but it's like, yeah, he's not a great athlete. I'm sorry. Right. There's that much distance. I'm sure there are things he could have done better, but if you get there's one of those a game, I'm not going to beat the guy over the head for it. At the end of the day, the Patriots are not an elite team in terms of talent, and that kind of goes back to the red zone as well. It kind of is what it is. Robert Spillane is a player with plenty of strengths. Covering explosive players one-on-one in space is not necessarily one of those. But dude had 14 tackles, 4 stops, and, of course, the interception, and really just that one bad miss. So you got to give him credit because I thought he was very patient and physical against the run. He got moved at times when offensive linemen got to the second level, but he had a red zone tackle for a stop. He had a 3rd down space tackle against Jalen Warren, so it was kind of a boom or bust kind of situation. But on the tackle, I think there was a little less space between them. He also met Jalen Warren in the hole on an outside zone run, or on a couple outside zone runs, I'm pretty sure, where as soon as Jalen tried to cross the line of scrimmage, Spillane was right there and stuffed him. He did guess wrong on the bounced run by Warren, where he went to the wrong side of the offensive lineman and wound up getting blocked. And again, there was the one missed tackle in space, but it was a much improved performance from Spillane. And the reason I have this on is because of how important he's going to be to your defense. There's too much responsibility on his plate, and also the fact that he is a captain. You don't want to have to completely take him off the field for Marte Mapu. You love for Mapu to be that dime linebacker and for Spillane to be more of your Bentley, where no, he's not the best athlete, but he has great spatial awareness, can take things away, even if he's not necessarily making plays on the ball. And when the ball does come in his direction, like when Rodgers threw directly to him, he can take advantage of it. So Spillane is a very important member of this defense, even if, he does have his weaknesses. So to see him have such a great bounce back game that we were saying, this is your old team, man. You just had a really bad game. We saw how distraught he was. We were hoping it was going to be, a bounce back and very impressive game for him, and that's exactly what it was. So kudos to Robert Spillane for holding it down in the middle. Much improved performance from him.
Good stuff. Finally, some again an up arrow for him, which is it's what we needed to see, especially again after you pour in so much money on the defensive side of the ball. The guys like him, Milton Williams, they're here, they're making impacts, and again, once you get Christian Gonzalez back, you hope that entire unit can kind of come together and keep moving forward. Take the offense for what it's worth. We just talked about Josh McDaniels. Get the stupid mistakes, the penalties, the turnovers out of the way. And again, I hate to be. Well, I do like being an optimist, but in this situation, they only score 14 points. They look like garbage. The turnovers were detrimental. But if you clean up the very fixable mistakes, they could have easily won this game. They could have easily been 2-1 for the first time in over a year, the second time since 2022. They could have been on the up and up. So it was promising to see what happened throughout the day, but there's still just too many brain farts. I'll say it again. What the heck are you doing for this team to make you be able to believe in them for the short term moving forward? But Carolina next week, hopefully they can turn the tide there, even though they smoked Atlanta this week. But we'll get into Carolina tomorrow as the week continues here. So Patriots again lose 21-14 to the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 3. That's our breakdown. 3 reasons for.
Real quick, I want to say
Taylor has something else. What do you got?
Yeah, because I've also seen some comparisons for like Vrabel and Mayo, which is ridiculous.
Oh God, yeah, I did see that.
Absolutely insane. Because you can just nitpick stats. It's 3 games in. Like there are things you need. Interesting, not important for the most part. 3 games in, it's just not a big enough sample size. Most teams use 4 games. Just for context, when they're studying a team and they're putting together stats and things like that. But I will say, yes, there are still some moments where the penalties are just seemingly egregious, and they seem like they're not necessarily disciplined. There are times where, early on I thought the defense was overthinking things, but they've recovered. But I think these are 2 very different teams where you
100%.
do still have a talent deficit, and you're hoping that Mike Vrabel could, make you better than that. And I think these are the early growing pains where sometimes you just need to know what your issues are so you can nip them in the bud. If they don't get fixed, we can talk about that. I think this team has done a better job of correcting the really glaring problems that are correctable week to week, like outside zone blocking for a young unit that's still learning together. I don't think that gets fixed in a week. You're just hoping there's incremental growth, which I think we are seeing to a degree. I also think that they're schemed better. Like watching this offense is, no offense to Alex Van Pelt, he did his best and he did a solid job, but it's night and day different. Like,
totally.
Again, like I've said, Josh McDaniels is cooking and doing a lot of really good things. The defense, after the first week where I was like, you're getting way too cute with a lot of this stuff, I feel like they pulled back on that and are much more structurally sound. I think there's elements of, it's not quite as varied as some of Belichick's defenses were, but you see like they're introducing new things week to week. It's truly a game plan defense where I don't know why they went too high early on in this game. I won't lie, but they adjusted. So it's definitely a well-coached team, even if I think the lessons that are being taught aren't always being executed on the field. But this is not nearly as alarming as what was going on last year, where we're like, this is bad, but we'll keep waiting and seeing. It's more like, this could be a significantly different team. And I think I see the trajectory where they can continue to grow, but they're also counting right now on so many young players. Last year, they were counting on backups because the rookies couldn't even get on the field. And when they were unplayable. This year, they got a lot of rookies contributing and who are doing solid jobs for the most part, even if there is significant room for growth. So just to close, if we're talking about those comparisons of the Mayo era and the Vrabel era, first, ridiculous. But either way, I think this is a more talented team and it is a more well-coached team. They just need to be more consistent, and I think you could say that for most teams in the NFL.
There was nothing tangible from the Gerard Mayo Patriots that is like, oh, okay, this is good, let's build on this. All of it was just, it's really bad, but it's his first year, and it's a rookie quarterback. Let's just give them a chance to work it out. This year, it's, you see what's there. The offense is again, as you said, cooking, even though the turnovers and things of that nature, but it's like, there's tangible, okay, this defense has done this before. There's better players, even though they're still at, a talent deficit, I would say across the board against, the top tier NFL teams. But it's like, it's the undisciplinedness and the stupid mistakes that are still there, which is unfortunate. But those are correctable things by, or things that can be corrected by a coaching staff that looks like, again, it's hard to give the coaches not that it's hard to give the coaches the benefit of the doubt, but I hate sitting here and saying like, oh, well, they're only making stupid mistakes, but the coaching's really good, because that is a part of coaching. But I do think that it's a coaching staff that you can trust to get this out of these players. So long story short, that's our breakdown. Patriots lose 21-14 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now we move on to Carolina Panthers week. Patriots back at home again next Sunday, welcoming Bryce Young and the Panthers to Foxborough. So we'll have it covered for the rest of the week here on Patriots Press Pass. We'll do a mailbag Wednesday as always. So we'll ask for those questions tomorrow and answer them here on the channel tomorrow night. Until then, Taylor, thanks for all the hard work. Thanks for being here with me. This is Taylor's work that we do here. So I'm simply the facilitator.
I don't know what happened. Let me find. Oh, he's back.
I don't know what I was doing. I slid my keyboard for some reason and it backed me out. But it's over an hour, so thanks for guys tuning in. I appreciate it. That's our breakdown. We'll be back next the rest of the week. Until then, thank you guys. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and we'll see you next time. Peace out, everyone.